Hello, Lex here. Today we are implementing our UI elements to use it in the menu first. Let's close all this and create new folder in src. Let's call it UI. And in UI, first we are going to create the simplest one, text field, and also text field cpp. In cpp file, include pch pch.h, include ftext field.h namespace wc e, and here namespace wce class ftext field. And here we start with public constructors and destructor. Nothing crazy here, just empty. And let's say functions. In functions, we need the only function draw. The draw function will draw the content of the text field into the screen buffer. So here we type class f screen buffer reference screen buffer. The class here means that we are really hard to say. You will see in a minute why we're doing this, because I don't want to include our screen buffer everywhere. We can avoid this using this class here. So accessors. In accessors, simply first chord get position. Actually, let's go to the variables first, so you can understand what is going on here. Why do we need these accessors? Variables. In variables, chord position, word attribute to apply on our text, and std white string, let's call it text. Okay, so basically we need to be able to get our position, to be able to get our word get attribute, and const std white string get our text, get text. And in addition, we also going to need size T, get length to get our text field length, which is depend on our text length. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Let's implement this. And also we want to be able to modify modifiers those variables, not only get their values. So here f text field, we probably have done this before with screen buffer. Chord position text field. Let's implement this now. So in the constructor, we are going to specify our default position at chord, and let's leave it empty, which means 0, 0 by default. And attribute let's say, and do not forget comma here, let's say let's set a nice blue color. You can experiment with this. Foreground green, and also foreground blue. And here, this is not necessary here, but why not? Let's reserve 120 characters for our text. So in the destructor, we don't need to do anything. And here, to use screen buffer, we include oh yeah, bugging out sometimes, bugs out maybe I should say, screen buffer f screen buffer dot h. Okay, or let's divide this into the two sections. And in the draw command, we going to screen buffer fill with attribute, and attribute first position of our text. We are going to fill, we want to fill our text with our specified attribute. Here, static cast into word, double word, text length, text.length. We actually using the white string function here. And here, attribute, and also write to buffer at our position and text. So the draw command is ready to use. Okay, here this weird bug always happen. Here we're going to just basically return our variables. We are going to return our text length, and that's it. In setters, first return the reference this, and just simply set our variables. And we are done with our text field. Pretty simple. So the second one will be the button class. Let's call it fButton. fButton, hfButton, cpp. Close this, and cpp file first, include pch dot h fButton h namespace and constructors and destructor. Here, namespace wce class fButton, and in button we also in button we actually dependent on our text field. So let's include text field. We will be using our text field to set text to the button. The button is a kind of container for the text field. So first public constructors and destructor. And in functions, we first need enable and also disable void draw. we always need this void draw, and here class have screen buffer screen buffer. So enabling and disabling, we need to subscribe and unsubscribe from events. We don't want our buttons to react on events when they are disabled. For example, we play in our game and then we hit escape, go into menu. We don't want the buttons in the game screen still be reacting to the events. Or when we play in a game, we also don't want the menu buttons to be active and react to the events. That's why we need this functionality. And first, let's implement our variables. Private or private functions first. We need one private function here, void generate ID. We need identification number for each button. This will be required for events to work properly. And let's call it components. In components, have text field, simple as that, and variables. Let's use word to our ID, chord for the position, short for width, word for attribute, and we need also bool here, enabled to keep track of which state our button now in, enabled or disabled. Static const expression word. Let's specify our attributes, our default attributes. Button attribute enabled when it's enabled, and also static const expression word button attribute disabled, and static const expression word button attribute hovered. I have refactored the code a little bit, so let's go back to our text field and add some functionality here. Void enable and void disable. And here we are going to basically this call set attribute here and enabled. We didn't have this one, right? We don't. Bool enabled. In case we want to disable and enable our text fields to change its color. Its colors probably true, true, and the same thing here, but false. And what attribute we want to pass here? Good question. We will specify it right here. So static const expression board text attribute enabled equals, and here disabled, and here foreground red and foreground green, foreground blue. And here I don't know how to specify it another way, so we will just type in 8, and this is the right one. You will see. Or maybe you will not. You can check it yourself. The A8 is the right one here. So now text attribute enabled, and here disabled. Simple as that. Yes, the text field is now complete. We can close it, and let's go back to the button. In button, we need to specify this. We don't need anymore. Specify our static constant expressions. So here, background green and background blue to have a nice, to get the nice cyan color. 8 here, and here background red, background green, and background blue, and also background intensity, background intensity. We pretty much done here. I almost forgot this, but we need here So let's remove this right now. Accessors and also modifiers, getters and setters basically. Here const word reference get id const. Here const chord reference get position. And here const short reference get width. And here const word reference get attribute. And here const std string reference get text. And const bool reference is enabled. Const. And let's go back to the button, not button, I mean text field real quick. And here let's also specify const bool reference is enabled in case we want this functionality here. Why not? And here return enabled. Simple as that. Now we can close this one. Here is enabled. And in modifiers we also have button reference set. We want to be able to set position, chord position, and button also set width, short width, and f button set attribute word attribute, and also f button set text std no const to std widescreen reference text to yes. Let's implement those functions, these functions, probably these functions. So in constructor, first specify the position chord. Let's put it on 0, 0 with at let's say 10 with this is correct, or oh, just comma here, don't forget the comma, and attribute by default enabled. Oh. And enabled to true by default. Here we also first need to generate ID and enable, or we don't need enable here. Actually, we don't need this because, no, we need this. We need to make sure that the text is enabled. So in enable, first let's enable our text. Next, this set attribute button attribute enabled, and enabled we set to true. Same to the disable, but disable here disabled, here false. In the draw, we first need to include screen buffer to be able to use it. And here, simply first text draw screen buffer, and not text but text field buffer. Let's fix this real quick. Buffer and screen buffer simply fill with attribute position of our button static cast to double word width and attribute, and here we are ready to go. In our accessors, we are going to simply return our variables. Here, return text field get text, this might be this const reference here might be the wrong move, might be incorrect, but let's try this out. And in set, in each of these, this position equals position, but this is not the end of this. We also need to text field set position, and here let's specify our position. First static cast, not const, static cast short position x plus 1 position y. We basically want to move our text a little bit to the right. And set width. This is simple actually. Set attribute, also simple. And here in set text field, set text. So now about the generate ID. To generate unique ID, we will use the most simple approach, I guess. What could be simpler than declare the static local variable of type word new ID equals 0, and ID, our ID, will be equal to new ID, but also this new ID we want to increment by 1 each call. So the next ID, the first ID will be 1, or 0, I mean 0, and after this assignment it will be incremented by 1. The next ID will be 1, the next 2, the next 3, the next 4, and so on. So our buttons are ready to go. Now we can use it and add the components to it. Include fButton.h, not like that, UI fButton. And with button comes the text field. Let's create std. We probably need to, not probably, we need to include this first. Let's include map here, and here std map, and we need names for our buttons. We need to set names. Let's go here in UI and create enumeration for our button names. eButton it will be called. Here namespace WCE, like always, say namespace, and here enum class eButton, and here let's, for example, play and memory and settings and exit. Let's implement this first. Now we have our buttons, button names, and include. Let's include this here, UI eButton.h. And here let's create the map of eButton as a key and fButton as the actual element, as the value of this for this key. Let's call it buttons. And here in button, not in button, in menu CPP. Now we will implement the init function. We are going to create our buttons and key e button play, or let's call it start game. Let's call it start game. And here we will finally utilize our weird setters. This is what it was for. Chord, let's say 10, let's say 10, 10. Set position might be, maybe I have missed something, right? Position, just run just weird typo here. Position, I mean position. And here we can now use again dot set width 12, and again dot, and let's keep going, text L, and start game. Let's duplicate this, and here memory, here settings, here exit button, and here let's say 12, 14, 16, and the only text should be changed, memory settings exit. Actually, don't need these spaces here. The thing I want, and let's render our buttons. Not this, but let's say in for loop, we are going to iterate through each auto reference, square brackets, here key button, buttons, and button draw. Okay, we are done with our buttons here. We are now probably able to render this. And what I want to fix this real quick here, it's not just the functions, but iScreen interface. Remember that. Let's test this out and see if it works. Hit F5 and wait for it. here we have our buttons. Our buttons doesn't really work for right now, and we also need to disable this to be able to receive events from console, but this is another story. I think it's time to implement our event system to be able to interact with these buttons and all our UI stuff. This is a long journey, actually, implementing the event system. Let's go for it in another part, in the next part. In the next part, we will implement the event system to make our UI work. You can see it? Yes. And that's it for today. And at the here, let's go to the jet changes and started successfully. Yes, now we are done. Event system in the next chapter. Until then, see you, bye.